It is owed to us. Transparency is our birthright as Americans. The understanding, the knowledge that they are spending our taxpayer dollars well is owed to us. Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. I am in Hiroshima, Japan today. Yesterday we hit the Peace Memorial and went through a really pretty gut-wrenching and emotional time revisiting the horrors that were visited upon the civilian population of Hiroshima. And I'm going to do a video on that when I get back. I want to get my head around it and kind of compile the footage that I took and maybe talk to an expert or two. But wait for that. Today, right now, in this effort, I want to talk about this new letter from Jamie Raskin to the Honorable Jim Jordan requesting the testimony of Jack Smith. For a long time, Republicans have whined and complained about the corruption of the Jack Smith investigation. Fat, heavy, insane air quotes on corruption. And the best way, you would figure, to get to the bottom of the investigation and the investigatory methods that were used by the Department of Justice and the Special Prosecutor Jack Smith would be to question him, would be to compel his testimony before the United States Congress, the Judiciary Committee, which is chaired by Jim Jordan, to get to the bottom of exactly what he did. What exactly predicated the decisions made by his office? That is unlikely to happen, even though it is being requested by Jamie Raskin, the ranking member of the committee. And that the reason that they're not going to want to have Jack Smith before them is because he's going to be able to answer all of their questions. There was nothing untoward, there was nothing corrupt, there was nothing inappropriate about his appointment or the subsequent investigation at all. In fact, they had Donald Trump dead to rights relative to their warrants, relative to the predication of their investigation and the decisions they made, of the evidence that was compiled. Everything was above board. And the reason I say that so confidently is because you don't endeavor to prosecute a former president of the United States and candidate for president unless you have the evidence, unless you're doing it properly. You're crossing your T's and dotting your I's. And that is where this comes in. Jamie Raskin, at the beginning of this letter, kind of invokes a little bit of manipulation, the best kind of manipulation, bringing in Jim Jordan's old comments and wanting to get to the bottom of this, and you'll see this. This is the letter here. Dear Chairman Jordan, last week I applauded your call for transparency around Special Counsel Jack Smith's investigation into how President Trump knowingly retained hundreds of highly classified records at his Mar-a-Lago club and then defied subpoenas, obstructed law enforcement, actively hid evidence, and lied about his continuing retention of those records. I commend you for apparently joining us in demanding the full release of Mr. Smith's report, paid for by American taxpayers, as well as all accompanying records which the Department of Justice has been desperately concealing. I am now calling on you to accept Mr. Smith's offer to testify at a public hearing so the American people can all hear directly from him. And this is where transparency comes in. This is what we pay Congress to do, and do it publicly. Don't have him behind closed doors so Republicans can spin it one way and Republicans can then accuse Democrats of spinning it another way. This is what you do. You have it public, you have it televised so we can all make up our own mind. We can see the questions that are asked. We can see the answers that are given. We will know exactly how things went down, what the evidence was, what the decisions were. If there was anything inappropriate, let's get to the bottom of it. We want transparency. If Jack Smith acted inappropriately, he didn't. But if he did, ask your questions, Jim Jordan. Ask your questions, Republicans. Pin him down. Try to trap this expert prosecutor into admitting that something untoward happened. You're going to have the opportunity to do that. But just like with the Epstein files, they don't want it released. They don't want it public. This letter continues. Until now, special counsels leading investigations into a sitting or former president have always, he says with emphatic italics here, have always appeared before Congress to publicly answer questions about their investigation's findings. That is not because both parties necessarily agreed with the special counsel's conclusions, but because of the overwhelming public interest in understanding the substance, scope, and conclusions of their investigations. Special counsel John Durham testified publicly before the House Judiciary Committee in June 2023. Special counsel Robert Mueller testified publicly before the House Judiciary Intelligence Committees in July 2019. Independent counsel Ken Starr testified publicly before the House Judiciary Committee in November of 1998. And just last year, in March 2024, Special counsel Robert Hur testified publicly before the House Judiciary Committee. So why would it be any different for Jack Smith? Again, spoiler alert, I'll tell you why. It's because this involves Donald Trump. This involves a second term of Donald Trump. This involves a Republican Congress in a second term of Donald Trump. You would think that Republicans would be champing at the bit to get Jack Smith before them to unravel all of the corruption they claim took place. Instead, they're fighting this. Third paragraph, Mr. Smith has not led one, but two significant investigations into criminal wrongdoing by President Trump. The first involved President Trump's role leading a conspiracy to overturn the 2020 elections by promoting quote-unquote bullshit claims of election fraud, attempting to submit false slates of electors and to coerce Vice President Pence into accepting them, and, when all else failed, directing a violent mob to attack the United States Capitol. The second involved President Trump's deliberate hoarding of classified documents at Mar-a-Lago and his subsequent obstruction of justice to cover up his offense. To this day, DOJ is fighting to prevent the release of the special counsel's full report regarding this criminal activity. I know you agree that the American people, whose taxpayer dollars funded these investigations, have a compelling interest, indeed a right, in hearing directly from Mr. Smith about both investigations into the sitting president of the United States. All of the things I've just stated. It is owed to us. Transparency is our birthright as Americans. The understanding, the knowledge that they are spending our taxpayer dollars well is owed to us. And this includes Jack Smith's investigation. Don't you want to know that everything was above board? Don't you want to know if something was done that was inappropriate, that was illegal, that was immoral, that was unethical? Don't you want to know that? I do. Republicans don't. They want nothing more than to not have Jack Smith testify. Final paragraph. Your letter to Mr. Smith and your statements over the past few years have leveled serious accusations against him and his team, claiming they engaged in partisan and politically motivated prosecutions and employed, quote-unquote, disturbing tactics that, quote-unquote, undermine the integrity of the criminal justice system. You have invited Mr. Smith to appear for a secret, closed-door transcribed interview to answer the committee's questions, but Mr. Smith has made it clear that he is prepared to address those allegations publicly. I can think of no reason to deny the American people the opportunity to hear his testimony under oath and with questioning from members of both parties, and to let all Americans judge for themselves the integrity of Mr. Smith's investigations. There is no reason his appearance should be in the shadows of a back room and subject to the unusual, tiresome partisan tactics of leak and distort. And then finally, the final sentence, I therefore call on you to accept Mr. Smith's offer and schedule a public hearing of the full committee at the earliest opportunity. I guess we'll end with, what do you think the chances are of that? What do you think the chances are of that, of a Jim Jordan-led Judiciary Committee? This should tell you everything you need to know about the Republican Party and who they see fit to put into power. Jim Jordan is, to call him a third-rate lawyer, I don't even think he's passed the bar. I don't think he's ever actually practiced law. He's just gone to law school, and he's the Judiciary Chairman. It should tell you everything you need to know. He's a partisan hack. He is someone who is in service, working in service to Donald Trump, to cover for Donald Trump, to be a high priest in the cult of Donald Trump. He's not here to seek justice. He's not here to seek truth. He's not, I mean, we're going here the Superman route. He's not here to seek the American way. He's here to cover for the credibly accused child rapist Donald Trump. The criminal, or the court adjudicated, not in a criminal court, civil court, but a criminally, or I said it again, not criminally, although it's a crime, the civilly adjudicated in court rapist of a woman, sexual assaulter of a woman. It's no longer alleged. He was found guilty. He was found liable. It's not guilty because it's not a criminal court. See, it's innate. It's a natural inclination to call a spade a spade. Anyway, I'd love your opinion on this. Where are you? And more importantly, let's make some prognostications. Let's make some predictions in the comments. Do you believe this is going to come to pass? Are we going to see some Jack Smith testimony, or are Republicans going to ensure that that doesn't take place?
Well, he's going to get a third term. So Trump 28. Trump is going to be president in 28, and people just ought to get accommodated with that.
So what about the 22nd Amendment?
There's many different alternatives. At the appropriate time, we'll lay out what the plan is. But there's a plan, and President Trump will be the president in 28.
Republicans are all but admitting. They're admitting it in the Republican way, where they talk shifty and move around and try to obfuscate what their actual intent is. But they're all but admitting right now that they're going to interfere not only in the 2026 midterms, but in the 2028 presidential election. I got two clips for you here. Donald Trump saying that we can never let happen what happened in 2020. We can't let that happen again, which means him losing an election. Joe Biden won a free, fair, settled American election by over 7 million votes, and Donald Trump dispatched a violent white supremacist mob to the Capitol to try to insurrect the Capitol, to try to overturn a free and fair election, to try to reinsert him extra-constitutionally, illegally, anti-democratically back into office. And that's exactly what they're planning for Donald Trump. I have contended, I don't think Donald Trump's long for this world. I think he's going to be dead within 12 or so months. I don't think he's going to see the end of this term. You can't have gravy and Big Mac sauce coursing through your veins and live to see your 81st or 82nd year. It seems self-evident to me. But not only is Steve Bannon calling for, admitting that there is a conspiracy underfoot to have Donald Trump have a third term, Donald Trump is talking coded about it as well. Let's start with Donald Trump, then we'll move on to an interview that Steve Bannon just did, where he said some radical and troubling things.
Or really, I think it's got to be handled in a proper way. If it's not handled in a proper way, we don't want it to happen again. We can never let what happened in the 2020 election happen again. We just can't let that happen. And so the way we go, I know Cash is working on it, everybody's working on it, and certainly Tulsi's working on it. We can't let that happen again to our country. Look at what's happened, where you have millions of people being allowed to come into our country, all because of a crooked election, where they come from prisons, they come from jails, they come from mental institutions and insane asylums, they're drug dealers, the people that they've allowed to come into our country.
All these people are working on it because we can't allow another election where Donald Trump loses. Kash Patel is working on it. The director of the FBI is ensuring that Donald Trump doesn't lose another election, that Republicans don't lose another election. Everybody else is working on it, he says. Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, is working on a plot, a conspiracy. These are stark words from an American president. And it gets even worse when outsiders like Steve Bannon, who don't have a role in government, are also at the tip of the spear plotting a conspiracy. They have co-conspirators working all throughout, from the Heritage Foundation on through into the government, talking about the plot to keep Donald Trump in office, to have him violate the Constitution, the 22nd Amendment of the Constitution, to keep him in office for a third term. Watch this.
Well, he's going to get a third term. So Trump 28, Trump is going to be president in 28, and people just ought to get accommodated with that.
So what about the 22nd Amendment?
There's many different alternatives. At the appropriate time, we'll lay out what the plan is, but there's a plan, and President Trump will be the president in 28. We had longer odds in 16 and longer odds in 24 than we got in 28. And President Trump will be the president of the United States, and the country needs him to be president of the United States. We have to finish what we started. And the way we finish it through Trump. Trump is a vehicle. I know this will drive you guys crazy, but he's a vehicle of divine providence. He's an instrument. He's very imperfect. He's not churchy, not particularly religious, but he's an instrument of divine will. And you can tell this of how he's pulled this off. We need him for at least one more term, right? And he'll get that in 28.
You're not driving me crazy. I'm trying to understand the coherence of the things you've just told me in the last few minutes. On the one hand, you've said the Constitution is fit for purpose. Secondly, you've said that President Trump needs another term, even though the 22nd Amendment makes pretty clear that he cannot have another term.
Why does it make that clear?
Because he's on his second term already.
At some point in time, we will make sure we go through, Zanny, and define all those terms. Okay?
But even if you find a way to undermine you will be undermining the spirit of that amendment, even if you find some way around it. And to those
Can the American people, if the American people, with the mechanisms we have, put Trump back in office, are the American people tearing up the Constitution? Would that be tearing up?
Well,
would the American people be going against the spirit of the Constitution, ma'am?
I think yes, actually, because I think what you will end up with is a populist justification for a quasi-dictatorship.
That's not true at all. Trump
That's what it sounds like.
It's not. Trump is a dictatorship. Did you just see the compromises he had to make on the big, beautiful bill? You see the compromises he has to do on everything, on accommodating Zelensky, on what President Trump. President Trump is nothing but a series of negotiations to kind of keep this thing rolling forward, where he's having trade-offs all the time.
But Steve, you've just spent the last 20 minutes telling me we have to smash the other side. There's no room for debate. There's no room for compromise. We must smash them. And now you're telling me this is a negotiation. I mean, that's
no.
I guess that's why it seems to me some kind of tension
First off, the only way President Trump wins in 2028 and continues to stay in office is by the will of the American people, okay? And the will of the American people is what the Constitution embodies. And so I think we're going to be in good hands there. We need to finish what we started. And President Trump is the instrument, a providential instrument to finish this job.
One, let me say this. This isn't against the spirit of the Constitution. This is against the letter of the law. This is a fundamental violation of the 22nd Amendment. This is against the spirit of the Republicans who break out their pocket constitutions and act like it's a venerable document that they love, that they've sworn oath to. Where are Rand Paul and Ted Cruz and Mike Lee, the libertarian element of the Republican Party, the constitutionalists, the originalists? Where are they? All of these people have raised their right hand, Steve Bannon included, by the way, he was a naval officer, have raised their right hand and sworn oath, a solemn vow to the Constitution of the United States. And where are they? They are here for it. They are plotting. It is a conspiracy to violate the Constitution. And all of this signaling that Steve Bannon is doing about Donald Trump being a vehicle of divine providence, an instrument of divine will. They're painting this in their white Christian nationalist manner to act as though God himself has chosen Donald Trump to be president of the United States for a third term, in contrary to the rules set forth in the Constitution. But when he says, and this is the most dangerous thing he said, at the appropriate time, we'll lay out what the plan is, but there is a plan. He said that. This is a conspiracy against the nation, against democratic will, against the Constitution, all so that the further goals of the Heritage Foundation and the ghouls who wrote Project 2025 can see the structural realignment of our country, realigning it to their white Christian nationalist goals. Very dangerous. Anyway, I'd love your thoughts. You can comment below. Let's have a conversation in the comments below this video, whether that be on Facebook or on YouTube.
He was not guilty of anything. That what he did, well, you don't know much about crypto. You know nothing about nothing. You fake news. But let me just tell you that he was somebody that, as I was told, I don't know him. I don't believe I've ever met him.
Narratives that we hear all the time from Republicans is that Donald Trump is here to save the country. Donald Trump is here to do the will of the people, to make the lives of Americans better. The odd thing, the self-evident thing, the thing that is just glaringly obvious is the fact that he is doing things to enrich himself, to imbue himself with more and more power and influence and control over the very mechanisms of government that no other president in the history of our country has wielded. And he does it to enrich himself. Even his pardons. Yesterday, he was asked a question about, let me also say this, he's also very confused about everything because he's not truly the puller of the levers of power in the government. He has a couple of shadow presidents. He's got Stephen Miller, who I've talked about at length. He's got Russell Vought, and he's got others. People who actually are running the government. People who are actually directing the agenda of policy in the country, while Donald Trump sees fit to enrich himself. And he was asked a question yesterday after having pardoned CZ Zhao, a Chinese-born crypto not really an influencer. He's a billionaire. He's a wildly wealthy person who has business interest with Donald Trump, World Liberty Financial, you know, the company that Donald Trump's goofy kids run. And he's been pardoned by Donald Trump. And when asked a question about it, Trump acts like he's all confused. He doesn't know who's this. I don't know. People said he's a really good guy. And we'll get to that because the things that he has pleaded guilty to and the accusations against him by the previous administration and the Justice Department, the things he pleaded guilty to are that the money laundering relative to the funding of Hamas. And you would think that there's not a genocide in Gaza that Republicans don't love and get behind, that they would be against the financing of terrorism through Hamas. And that's what we're looking at here. But listen to this answer to a question about the pardon, the confusion for one, and I don't know if he's feigning confusion or if his brain really just malfunctioned in the moment. There's no way to know. But watch his answer. We'll talk about who CZ Zhao is, and then also something that Caroline Levitt said.
You pardoned the founder of Binance. Can you explain why you chose to pardon him, and did it have anything to do with his involvement in your
Which one?
family's?
Who is that?
The founder of Binance. He has an involvement in your own family's crypto business.
Yes, I believe we're talking about the same person because I do pardon a lot of people. I don't know. He was recommended by a lot of people. A lot of people say that, are you talking about the crypto person? A lot of people say that he wasn't guilty of anything. He served 4 months in jail, and they say that he was not guilty of anything, that what he did, well, you don't know much about crypto. You know nothing about nothing. You fake news. But let me just tell you that he was somebody that, as I was told, I don't know him. I don't believe I've ever met him. But I've been told by a lot of support. He had a lot of support. And they said that what he did is not even a crime. It wasn't a crime, that he was persecuted by the Biden administration. And so I gave him a pardon at the request of a lot of very good people.
You know Donald Trump is up to some no good shit when he acts like he doesn't know. When he says, I believe we're talking about the same person because I do pardon a lot of people. Which one was that? Who's that? Oh, I wonder how much money he gave me. I do pardon a lot of people. I don't know. He was recommended by a lot of people. He does the same thing that Mike Johnson does when asked a question about Donald Trump's impropriety and, the raping of children. I haven't heard that. I haven't looked into that. I don't know. I'm unprepared for the question. You'll have to ask me later. And then he's never prepared. It's the same thing Donald Trump does. Caroline Leavitt had this to say. Then I'm going to get into, very briefly, a little bit from this Reuters article about what exactly he did, what exactly has been alleged, and his guilty plea in the matter. But first, paid liar with lips ablazing, according to Donald Trump, Caroline Leavitt.
Two questions on different topics, if you'll
Sure.
indulge me. On the pardon of Changpeng Zhao, and apologies if I'm mispronouncing that name, Binance has significant business interests with World Liberty Financial, the president's family's crypto company. How do you respond to the allegations from Democrats that this is a corrupt act?
I would respond and say the president is exercising his constitutional authority to grant clemency requests. And the president and the White House have a very thorough examination of every pardon request that comes to the president's desk. It is thoroughly reviewed by the White House Counsel Office, and I spoke with our great White House counsel about the pardon after it happened. This was an overly prosecuted case by the Biden administration. Even the judge in the case admitted that the Biden administration was pursuing a egregious over-sentencing of this individual, and the previous administration was very hostile to the cryptocurrency industry. So the president wants to correct this overreach of the Biden administration's misjustice, and he exercised his constitutional authority to do so. And to the Democrats, I would just say there's nothing more corrupt than what President Biden did on his way out the door, pardoning his extremely corrupt son and many of his associates.
That is a remarkable moment. This guy has direct business interest with the kids of Donald Trump, with Donald Trump himself. What do you say about the calls that this is improper, that this is unethical, that this is self-dealing, that he would pardon this guy who's going straight back into the crypto market now that he's pardoned? What would you say to that? The president has the right to pardon him. No answer about the corruption at all. That should tell you. Listen, it's the same thing I say all the time, that oftentimes it's what's not said that tells you the most, and it's the part of the question that she refused to answer that tells us everything. Now, let me tell you a little bit about who this guy is. This is from Reuters. Trump pardons convicted Binance founder CZ Zhao. U.S. authorities said in 2023 that Binance had failed to report suspicious transactions with organizations including Hamas and Al-Qaeda, and with websites dedicated to selling child sex abuse materials. All three of those things are something that Republican voters, at the very least, the QAnon crowd, the Save the Children crowd, they would be against. They would be against sex trafficking. They would be against the abuse of children, right? That's what they claim. That's what they say. They can't stop talking about it, although now they're all mousy relative to the release of the Epstein files. But also Al-Qaeda, also Hamas. Ooh, dangerous. Terrorism. But they're going to let this guy be pardoned, and there's no word about it. Zhao, a citizen of Canada who was born in China, personally paid a $50 million fine and served nearly 4 months in prison last year after pleading guilty to the same charge as his company. After pleading guilty, that's admitting to the crime. However, he kept his Binance stake while one of his appointees was made chief executive. I've made mistakes and I must take responsibility, Zhao said when he stepped down. I've made mistakes and I must take responsibility, he said when he stepped down, when he pleaded guilty to the crime. The full and unconditional pardon could pave the way for him to return to the business he co-founded in 2017. It may also offer the chance for Binance to expand in the United States as the crypto industry booms under the Trump administration. A spokesperson for Binance, the world's largest crypto exchange by trading volumes, thanked Trump for his leadership. That's where People know exactly how to deal with Trump, how to manipulate Trump, how to get what they want from Trump. You praise him or you pay him. And both of those things came to pass in this case. They thanked him for his leadership. Thank you for your divine providence, as Steve Bannon likes to talk about. But also your leadership, sir. With tears in my eyes, thank you, while they're paying him under the table millions, hundreds of millions of dollars going into business with his dopey, goofy sons. This is corruption. Public corruption that we should just get used to while Donald Trump is president. And that leads me to why the midterms are so important. They're going to try to rig them. They're going to try to cheat. And that is why we need to show up in full force. Everybody, if you're an occasional voter, the midterms are especially precarious because of the fact that people don't show up like they do for general elections. I hope that people do show up like they showed up this last weekend with the No Kings rallies, with the No Kings protests. We need millions and millions and millions of people to show up and voice their concern, their objections to what is taking place in this country. You can also voice your objections. Look at that. What a great segue. In the comments below this video, wherever you're watching it, whether that be Facebook or YouTube, you can also call the voicemail line, 714-576-4054. And of course, as always, you can email me daily@dollemore.com. Please consider supporting this work. We are on patreon.com/IDoubtItPodcast. For $2 a month, you can help produce these videos and help me reach the millions, sometimes tens of millions of people on a monthly basis. You can take part in that. You can also, right here on YouTube, click the join button below the video to become a channel member, again, for $2 a month. This might be the most dangerous thing Donald Trump has ever uttered.
I don't think we're going to necessarily ask for a declaration of war. I think we're just going to kill people that are bringing drugs into our country. Okay, we're going to kill them. You know, they're going to be like dead.
Yesterday at a roundtable in the White House, Donald Trump said something maybe more alarming than anything else he's ever said. More brazenly corrupt, more brazenly anti-constitutional and murderous that he's ever said. Admitting that, we don't need to declare war while using our military against people, civilians, non-combatants, no due process offered. They're drug dealers. They're criminals, if you believe Donald Trump. They're not military members. And we'll just kill them. I don't need a declaration of war. I don't need to follow the Constitution, which is very clear, outlined in Article 1, Section 8, that Congress has the power to declare war. Article 2, Section 2 of the Constitution grants Donald Trump the power to direct the military once war has been declared by Congress. You know how you always hear the Republicans talk about the Constitution and talk about the separation of powers and talk about the brilliance and the genius of our founders? James Madison, a great genius who didn't think that it was immoral or wrong to own human beings as property, but so on point about how a government should be run. You know, that guy. By the way, my middle name is Madison, named after the guy. Yet, they don't mind Donald Trump violating the Constitution. Republicans who have, they are supplicants. They have just prostrated themselves before Donald Trump, laying spread eagle for him to do his business on them. They don't mind that he violates the Constitution. They don't mind that they are absolutely abdicating their role as a co-equal branch of government. They have surrendered their power under the Constitution of the United States. They don't want to declare war. They don't want to cross the dear leader. And that's exactly where we are in this country right now. Those two constitutional articles, Article 1, Section 8, Article 2, Section 2, are at play here. He was asked a question about this, about declaring war, that if you're going to be using the military to murder, to extrajudiciously kill human beings with no due process that you claim are criminals, you're not claiming they're combatants against the country. This isn't a police action to take out some shadowy terrorist organization. These are crimes. Drug trafficking is pernicious. under the Republican view, but it's a crime. It's not an act of war. And they are surrendering their right under the Constitution, their duty under the Constitution to declare war. And here is Donald Trump talking about it, where he just admits, yeah, we're going to kill some people. I don't need a declaration of war. We're just going to kill some people. And the other thing that I want to point out, it just occurred to me while I'm talking about this is the same language he uses against Democrats, that we are radical left lunatics, that we are a domestic extremist organization, as talked about by Stephen Miller, that we are terrorists. He looks at the No Kings protest and thinks that it needs to be dealt with, that these are not aligned with the ideologies of Americans, of the ethos of Americans, that we don't aspire to the same American values that he does. So it's not far removed, while he's denying due process to Americans and permanent residents and people who are here legally and out of the scope of what is allowed by the Secretary of State with what they call illegal aliens. It's not far removed for him to want to start killing people if he's not providing due process for people who are just committing crimes. Watch this and pay attention to his language. This might be the most dangerous thing Donald Trump has ever uttered.
And briefed them on the operations.
No,
against
we will
these.
go. I said.
You will go, and
we
it would
will
be
go.
difficult for them to object.
I don't see any loss in going. No reason not to. You know, they'll always complain. Oh, we should have gone. So we're going to definitely. I'd like to just tell you. Let's go. We'll go.
And Mr.
We're going to
President,
tell them what we're going to do, and I think they're going to probably like it, except for the radical left lunatics.
And Mr. President, if you are declaring war against these cartels, and Congress is likely to approve of that process, why not just ask for a declaration of war?
Well, I don't think we're going to necessarily ask for a declaration of war. I think we're just going to kill people that are bringing drugs into our country. Okay? We're going to kill them. You know, they're going to be like dead. Okay?
We don't have to declare war. We'll just wage war, is what he's saying. How stark is that comment? We're just going to kill people. We're going to kill them. They're going to be like dead. This isn't a 90-day police action where he needs to go back to Congress to reauthorize. This is a violation of both Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution. And by virtue of violating that, he's violating Article 2, Section 2. He's violating the War Powers Resolution that was passed in 1973 when the protracted conflict in Vietnam was going on and on and on, and the American people were fed up. And finally, Congress said, no, you cannot do this any longer. We hold the power under the Constitution to declare war. And Donald Trump now is that. We don't need a war declaration. We'll just kill people. We'll just summarily execute people via drone, via military action, who are accused of committing crimes. There's a lot of people. The families of these murdered victims have said, my husband was a fisherman. He's out there fishing. He never came home. The American government is murdering people on the high seas. This is immoral, unethical, unconstitutional, unconscionable behavior by Donald Trump. Due process is ingrained in our system of law. Our jurisprudence system is the foundational, it's undergirded by due process. Otherwise, the government can just make any claim at all and arrest, detain, imprison, kill. It's not the country that we've had for 250 years. Republicans like to act like they love the Constitution. They love our history. They love our country. We're the greatest country on the earth, yet not a peep from Republicans about this particular dangerous statement by Donald Trump that, mark my words, will come home. This will land on the streets of the United States. We're only a few months removed from him saying shit like this about taking care of citizens. Even in this clip, he called us radical left lunatics. This is a man who thinks Chuck Schumer, moderate Democrat, is a radical left lunatic. If Chuck Schumer is a radical left lunatic, I have no idea what that makes me. Because I am far more left than Chuck Schumer. I am far more left than Hakeem Jeffries. Far more left than Adam Schiff, Cory Booker, Nancy Pelosi. This does not portend good things for the American way of life, for the American people, for our system of justice, for the rule of law. What this does portend good things for is this man who thinks he's a king, who thinks he operates outside of the constraints of the Constitution. I would love your opinion on this. I hope that you recognize how dangerous this is. I hope you'll share this video. I don't often make an appeal to share my content online, but this one is important. This might be the most dangerous shit that has ever come out of Donald Trump's mouth. And that's saying something, because there's doozies on a daily basis. Let's talk about this in the comments. You could do so on Facebook or YouTube. I'd love to see you there. Nearly half of new recruits who've arrived at the training over the last 3 months are being sent home because they cannot pass an open book test about the Constitution of the United States, about immigration law. Open book, and they can't pass. I've said many, many times on this channel, certainly many, many times on my podcast, I Doubt It, which, by the way, you should be subscribed to if you're not already, that I'm not an ACAB guy. I'm not an all cops are bastards guy, but I am an MCAB guy. Most cops are bastards. And it's because we have allowed in our country, we have fostered in our country a culture of impropriety, a culture of policing that they believe they are above the law. They don't believe they're constrained by the Constitution. They don't believe that they can be controlled, that we are at their whim. They can arrest, they can detain, they can do what they will. And under Donald Trump, that's more true now than it ever has been. And with his ICE operation, they're trying to ramp up and employ, they're trying to hire like 10,000 new masked secret police agents to kidnap people off the street, to take hostage Americans from the streets of the United States. And they're finding it difficult right now. We're learning just how, they're finding just how difficult it is to hire quality individuals who, one, respect the Constitution, understand the Constitution, understand the constraints placed on them by the Fourth Amendment and several others. And they're also finding it, and this is so funny, that it's not funny, it's super dangerous, but they're compiling a force. The force that they are manning is comprised of just abject fucking losers. Mental weaklings, physical weaklings, people who are insecure, just like Donald Trump, who want to go out there and crack heads and arrest people, but don't understand exactly what it takes to do the job and do the job properly. Get a load of this headline from from NBC News. Some new ICE recruits have shown up to training without full vetting. The recruits have had criminal backgrounds or failed drug tests, or were unable to meet physical or academic standards, raising concerns about the agency's rush to hire immigration officers, sources told NBC News. And these sources aren't like academics who are critical of police. These sources are current and former Department of Homeland Security officials. We're talking about dudes who can't do pull-ups or sit-ups or push-ups or run a mile and a half inside of 15 minutes. We're talking about people who can't pass open book tests about the constraints placed on them by the Constitution and the Fourth Amendment. Open book tests they can't pass. People who say, oh yeah, I don't have any criminal convictions, and they have criminal convictions. People who say, oh yeah, I've never done drugs, and then they pop positive on drug tests. Now, I don't think that's so important. I don't think if you smoke weed, you can't be a cop, but it's part of the rules. And if you think the rules don't apply to you, but you're going to enforce the rules, that makes you a dirty, filthy hypocrite. It makes you a weakling, dirty, filthy hypocrite. It makes you a mental idiot, dirty, filthy hypocrite. Get a load of this. Immigration and Customs Enforcement has placed new recruits into its training program before they have completed the agency's vetting process, an unusual sequence of events as it rushes to hire federal immigration officers to carry out President Donald Trump's mass deportation policy. A current and 2 former Homeland Security Department officials told NBC. These aren't critics of cops. These are cops talking about how dangerous this is. These are people who likely, hopefully, hold the profession in high esteem. I do not hold the profession in high esteem, but these individuals do. ICE officials only later discovered that some of the recruits failed drug testing, have disqualifying criminal backgrounds, or don't meet the physical or academic requirements to serve, the sources said. Staff members of ICE's training academy in Brunswick, Georgia, recently discovered one recruit had previously been charged with strong armed robbery and battery stemming from a domestic violence incident, the current DHS official said. The current DHS official said. Someone currently with the Department of Homeland Security said this. This is true. This is factual. This is a problem. They've also found, as recently as this month, that some recruits going through the 6-week training course hadn't submitted fingerprints for background checks, as ICE's hiring process requires, the current and former DHS officials said. Per ICE policy, applicants are required to pass drug tests and undergo security vetting through ICE's Human Resources Office before they show up for training. And that is not happening. They're getting every yokel off the street, every Meal Team 6 moron, everybody who wants to crack heads, a guy who couldn't survive in the military or couldn't actually perform as a cop. Now they've lowered the bar so low that they're getting drug-addled criminals who can't pass open book tests, and we'll get to that. The former official said the process was more strictly adhered to before a hiring surge that began this summer. The process was meant to weed out disqualified candidates before they were sent to training. Look, let me say this. How many videos have you seen of these assholes out in the street with their faces covered, running roughshod over the rights of individuals, citizens included? How many? And how many of them are among these recruits that aren't qualified? It's a question that needs to be answered. People need to be dragged before Congress, and this is one more reason why we need to show out in force to switch the majority in the House of Representatives so some actual oversight can be done. Since the surge began, ICE has dismissed more than 200 new recruits while they were in training for falling short of its hiring requirements, according to recently collected internal ICE data reviewed by NBC News. The majority of them, the individuals who are being dismissed, the people who are not qualified, the majority of them failed to meet ICE's physical or academic standards, according to the data. Just under 10 recruits were dismissed for criminal charges, failing to pass drug tests or safety concerns that should have been flagged in background checks before they arrived at training. Recruits are supposed to attest that they can pass ICE's physical fitness test, which includes sit-ups, pull-ups, and running 1.5 miles in under 14 minutes and 25 seconds. And apparently they got the donut brigade out there. Nearly half of new recruits who've arrived for training at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center over the past 3 months were later sent home because they couldn't pass the written exam according to the data. The academic requirement includes an exam in which officers are allowed to consult their textbooks and notes at the end of a legal course on the Immigration and Nationality Act and the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution, which outlines when officers can and cannot conduct searches and seizures. Nearly half of new recruits who've arrived at the training over the last 3 months are being sent home because they cannot pass an open book test about the Constitution of the United States, about immigration law. Open book, and they can't pass. They can't run a mile and a half in under 14 minutes and 25 seconds. Look, I'm 51 years old, and I can run a mile and a half in far less than 14 and a half minutes. What are they doing here? It's the crush to try to get to 10,000 masked secret police of Donald Trump. That's what they're doing. They don't care about the standards. They don't care about the qualifications of these individuals. This isn't the few, the proud, the Marines. This is ICE. This is MCAB. One last paragraph here. A slightly smaller group were dismissed because they failed the physical fitness test or had medical challenges. Some of those sent home had made it clear on their applications that they couldn't meet ICE's physical requirements, but they were sent to training anyway, the current and former DHS officials said. What the f*** are we doing here? When you look at cops, if you are a law and order person, like I know there's a lot of Democrats out there who don't share the same opinions that I have about law enforcement, about most cops being bastards. I don't think it's just a few bad apples. It's an endemic culture within policing. But when you allow them to mask their faces, to cover who they are, to not follow the rules and regulations, to illegally detain without due process, you're creating a Gestapo force in the name of Donald Trump. And with him making statements about we're just going to kill people, they're going to be like dead, it should cause alarm bells to go off in your head. This is why the midterms are so important. This is why we need a change, a sea change in leadership. This is why we need true progressives in Congress, not milquetoast, middle of the road, corporate Democrats. We need people of action, people of ethics, people of good moral character to run our country, to disallow this, to forbid this from happening. We don't want every yokel who has a penchant for cracking heads to be a cop. We want people who respect the profession, who look at it as a profession, who are professional at their jobs, who understand the constraints placed on them by the law, our rule book. What do you think? I invite you to the conversation. We can have it in the comments below the video, wherever you're watching it. If you're on Facebook, like and follow the Dollemore Daily Facebook page. If you're on YouTube, please subscribe. We're trying to get to 1.5 million subscribers by the end of the year. And I know that we can do it with your help. If you watch my videos with any regularity and you're not subscribed, or if you think you're subscribed, make sure, check. There's a lot of chicanery that goes on relative to YouTube unsubscribing people. I don't know if it's a glitch or by design, but our subs have very much slowed over the course of the last several months. Anyway, I love and appreciate you very much. I'd love to see you in my voicemails, 714-576-4054. And of course, you can email me, as always, the old-fashioned way, email daily@dollemore.com. I'll see you next time. Be genuine. Let me know what you think, and take care of one another.